Welcome to Warblog, part 2 of my ATGM guide. I've been doing some more tests and fiddles. Again, it might not be perfect, but I just thought I would give a quick run through on the ATGM, the anti-tank thingy what's it. I've put some modifications. Basically the range is going to be 3. I thought 2 was maybe a bit too limiting, so it's now 3. But what I've also got is they will be artillery based, so they will have a range. If the range is not specified, it's 3. Yeah, so if it is, it will be what's on the label. So let's just go ahead a turn, maybe. And so we've got everything refreshed, because I've been working on this one. So essentially, let's suppose we want to use this little anti-tank group here against this, for example, and then we could fire against this. They're in theory within range, that's our armour. A few things, no terrain effects take effect. So what we've got here are 3 units, nothing surrounding. So we can fire one of them. Die roll 12. Anyway, so we can continue that as per normal. Yeah, die roll 35. It goes. It's basically a sort of 100. Now, to be quite honest, I'm not sure whether there's any use in showing that, because the die roll is sort of conditional upon other things. It's not like the 1d12 system. But anyway, it actually works. So again, we've got 2-to-1 odds there. But what we've got here, to some extent, is a sort of, as you might imagine, the thing actually working. So we were up to 10, and their defense of 4. Now the thing to bear in mind is there's no terrain effects. There's absolutely no effects that sort of affect this. I did think about this. I thought, well, surely, if they're entrenched and all of that. But the thing is, the way these ATM things work, if you look at it, they're just sort of one-offs. So, if they're in the middle of nowhere with no defence in the desert, you'd still only be firing at one. So presumably you're positioning yourself so that you've got this sort of line of sight on something. It's not like an artillery barrage where the results are more random, or general combat where there's a lot more sort of generalized fire, where chances are more often than not the rounds and the hits are going to sort of go against defended positions. The whole idea of these things is they get an exact pinpoint line of sight. So I've taken that out, and also it makes it more effective. 2-to-1 is actually not a brilliant odd, but we're getting some damage there, and it's using the artillery system, which is a bit more opaque as opposed to transparent in regards to how I've interpreted it in the rules, and even though I understand how it works. But so that's that. This, if we do this one, we've just moved another way. Let's do this one here. We should get 3 units. Now one of these, this is what was happening before, and I've actually sorted this out now for artillery as well. If we now use, 1 minute, I was saying if we use, let's suppose we use this one, what we should have is the same pattern. So this guy is there because he's local, these guys are remote. It was getting a bit fiddly before, it's been like that for years, but I actually just realised what it was. So we attack this, we did no damage, but we've now still got the same pattern, so that's a development. Now he's attacking, because it's just infantry, he's just attacking at 1 to 3, because he's worth 3, they're worth 1. It's a remote assault attack, but so there's not a lot of point of using these against infantry units, but you can. I mean, you know, they might be sort of taking out a heavily defended position, but to some extent, you could say, well, why might I want to do that? And the answer is sort of obvious, because if you've got these anti-tank units and all you've got in front of you is infantry or motorized, well, you might want to fire at them, but this is a bit of a waste, because, you know, that's not what they're designed for. You know, I mean, you might sort of blow up, you know, one person. I mean, there's quite a lot of these videos where you see these anti-tank units being fired at sort of emplacements where there's one person. You know, so it's just not going to have the same effect. Whereas if this is a company, or if this is a unit of some sort, well, this is a company, but let's suppose there's 10 tanks in there. I don't know how many tanks are in the company, presumably probably a few more. Let's suppose you've got 20. If you actually hit that and take one out, it's like, you know, 5% of the total. Whereas if you take one person out here, it's a lot less, like 0.5%. So that's sort of pretty much how it works now. So you can fire against these soft targets. So you get a 4. If we go against, we reload. Come on here. If we go against this unit, we've got 1 against it and 2 remote. So again, if we attack here, we should have 4. So 4 versus 4 gave us a 1-to-1, and we got 2 damage on that. So, you know, that was convenient. And if we use this one, we can add them up. So, for example, if we add these 2 up, in theory, I haven't tried this yet. Yeah, we've got 2-to-1 there, and we've got 1.5 odds. It's probably better off to try multiple 1-to-1s. But you can sort of, you know, add them up if you're so inclined. But they're worth 4 multiplied by 4 against mechanized, 10 against armor, 1 against anything else, their face value against anything else. So that's pretty much that. But the main difference here with the ATMs, anti-tank guided missiles, is that they can now fire at range, as opposed to before they had to get next to it and then engage essentially in regular combat but receive their bonus. But, you know, I've just made that change basically following, you know, to be quite honest, it's something I've been meaning to do for a while, but the Southfront video had this thing on the ATGM, whatever they are, and it was quite interesting really, and sort of made it clear that it's quite long range stuff. And so I thought I'd try to sort of implement the long rangeness of it into the game, and because it does seem, you know, that's their key thing, that's the key sort of element here. And I mean, the whole thing seemed to be skewed towards, you know, some fairly poignant sort of, you know, considerations. You know, it was saying that, you know, in the early part of the Syrian war, the Syrians were against the Syrians were losing quite a lot of tanks to these ATGMs, and they were just being, you know, highly effective. Not that that's really changed, but now they're sort of not using their tanks as much, and you know, they are actually quite expensive and things. But it seems to me that, you know, if you were to take these ATGMs out, then there's really little that can sort of deal with this sort of stuff. So, for example, these irregulars, you know, at the moment, the modelling of that is that they can only really attack anything on its own up to 5, so they can't attack this stack. So this stack is actually fairly invincible. Now, it's still fairly invincible because it's a stack of motorized, so we can't use our ATGMs. But the thing is, you know, these tanks rolling around, you know, with support, for example, are relatively invincible. Now, we could get our irregulars against that, but they're worth 4 in defense. So it'd be a 1-to-1. So here we could get a 4-to-1 against it, possibly. But all we need to do is put this motorized unit in there, and you know, and they suddenly become invincible. You know, we can't even do that. It would be sort of, you know, even that would be a 1-to, you know, like a 1-to-2 or a 1-to-3. You know, so what I'm saying is, if you take the ATGMs out, you end up with a, you know, an almost impossible battle. But all of a sudden, these things, being able to attack not just the armoured units, but the armoured units specifically within the stack. So for example, if I were to end this turn, and I was to say, okay, well, we've got this armour here, let's do it like this, let's just do it, and then we end that turn, and say, okay, well, we're going to try and get this unit. We can actually go for the armour specifically with better odds. So it's a 2-to-1, so 1.1 damage. So all of a sudden these things become quite... Oh, we went against that. We didn't select that, so that was a pain. 0 damage. So we basically we could target this again and again and do some quite significant damage to a unit that really there's nothing else on the battlefield that can really damage it. I mean, even if we were to use artillery or rockets against this stack, the chances of it hitting the armour is actually quite low. Now, the rockets are still fairly useful and fairly effective. But anyway, so that's the sort of the change in the way that works. And I think that's going to make a little bit of difference into sort of, you know, how these ATGM things work. And, you know, maybe sort of, you know, help balance things up a bit. I'm aware that there's probably too many units, but it's all relative. So I think it still sort of works. But you know, so anyway, I'll leave it at that. You know, I hope that makes sense. You know, in relation, hopefully this will put the previous video into some perspective, because the previous video was just sort of it had a few too many sort of errors for me to just let sit. But I won't delete it. I'll just leave it up there. So here is the updated video with pretty much everything working. So I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.